This is me, walking down the street of San Francisco a few weeks ago. It was my first trip to the US. However, what struck me the most was not the charming West Coast vibe, but the constant insecurity caused by the city's drug problem. On the public streets of one of the world's richest cities, I could smell marijuana from time to time and witness drug use among the homeless. I hate to recall this, but our team was almost attacked by an apparently high drug addict who kept calling us racist terms as he tried to assault us. Luckily, we got away in the end. I couldn't help but try to figure out the drug crisis that's been plaguing the country, how serious it is, and what has led to it. As I began researching the topic, I discovered a surprising fact. The United States is the drug capital of the world. Here are some striking facts. The United States consumes more illicit drugs than any other country in the world. Half of Americans aged 12 and older have used illicit drugs at least once in their lifetime. Drug overdose deaths in the US exceed 1 million since 2000. In the last few years, there have been more than 100,000 deaths annually. These suppalling numbers might give you some sense of the gravity. And yes, some might argue that most illicit drug users are only using cannabis, which is now legal in 24 states for recreational use. Hence, the drug problem is not that serious, right? Nope. I know this is a debated issue in many countries, whether it should be legalized or not. But legalizing weed could be one of the causes of America's worsening drug crisis. Studies have shown that a large proportion of individuals who use cannabis go on to use other illegal drugs. This article was published in the International Journal of Drug Policy about 10 years ago. It revealed that approximately 45% of cannabis users progress to other illicit drug use. Not to mention the fact that cannabis addiction can lead to lung and brain damage, as well as increase the risk of schizophrenia, particularly for teenagers whose brains are still developing. It's easy logic that making it available in legal markets will only encourage the purchase and use of such drugs. Interest groups argue that legalizing it could at least reduce the crime and violence resulting from the illegal trade of marijuana. However, the reality has proven to be an even bigger black market for weed, fueled by the legalization of the drug. If you have watched Gentleman by Guy Ritchie, a marvelous film by the way, you might just be able to understand.
And when this little piggy goes to legal market and the demand way outpaces the supply, these locations, these green-fingered botanical boys, as well as my superior technology, will be at a premium. And you would own them all. Did you know it took 15 years after alcohol prohibition ended back home for the legal market to scratch that itch? 15 years.
It's not just in the films. For example, in New York, which legalized cannabis in 2021, sales are still dominated by illegal traders. The legalization of weed actually increases crime and threatens social security. Legalizing weed is just one thing. If you look back in history, America's fight against drugs has been nothing but a major failure. In 1971, the US declared a war on drugs with the aim of combating the illegal drug trade within the country.
I think needs to be made to the nation. America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse. In order to fight and defeat this enemy, it is necessary to wage a new all-out offensive.
But to many, the war was seen as a means to demonize and punish certain groups, such as racial and ethnic minorities, and to legitimize questionable policies, including invasive military action overseas. One such example is Plan Colombia in the late 1990s. It was a multi-billion-dollar aid package aimed at combating drug trafficking in Colombia. It involved significant military assistance and the deployment of US military forces. Critics argue that this was less about combating drugs and more about asserting US influence in the region and combating leftist insurgencies. Similar examples were also seen in Laos, Nicaragua, Peru, and Bolivia. Decades of militarized source control have only pushed drug organizations to other countries for production and trafficking, ultimately failing to reduce the supply of illicit drugs. Not to mention the CIA's collusion with anti-communist drug traffickers, allowing countless tons of cocaine to enter the States.
You bust a guy at DFW airport carrying 28 million bucks. He's charged, he's brought in, and then you get a call and you're told, let him go.
And that's the only time in my career that I got a call from the Attorney General of the United States, he was acting, and it was 28 to 29 million dollars, and we gave it back. And I later found out that that was CIA-related type drug money.
A 2020 assessment by the DEA confirmed that despite decades of these source control measures, cocaine availability remains steady in the US and overdoses are skyrocketing. If the purpose of the war on drugs is to decrease drug usage and prevent drug-related deaths, it has not made any progress at all. America has already spent over $1 trillion fighting the war on drugs, with billions spent annually on law enforcement and incarceration. These funds have often been criticized for being misallocated, with insufficient emphasis on prevention and treatment. The year 2023 has seen the first decrease in drug overdose deaths since 2018, but the number is still over 107,000, with cocaine-related deaths on the rise. The number only looks at overdoses. There are those who died of bacterial endocarditis related to their drug use. And there are tens of thousands of American children losing a parent to drug overdose annually. The enormous trauma illegal drugs inflict on individuals, families, and communities is hard to fathom. The presidential candidates debated inflation, gun violence, Ukraine, and aid to Israel, as well as endless anti-China policies. I guess the drug problem is just another domestic crisis that the country is too busy to work on.